Hey everyone, Chrissy with Pinovate. This tutorial is for our embroidery kit, which is absolutely awesome. I'm going to teach you how to do 6 different types of stitches so that you can create your own version of something absolutely adorable. So follow along. So in your kit, you are going to get a whole bunch of awesome little goodies. You're going to get a bunch of different embroidery hoops, 5 different sizes. You're going to get even weave fabric. So this one has little squares in it so you can see where your stitches need to go. You're going to also get a piece of cotton fabric that you can create your own embroidery on. A multitude of colorful, bright embroidery floss that you can use, as well as some scissors, needles, a thimble, needle threader, and a stitch ripper, just in case. So the first step is to assemble our hoop with our fabric. So grab one of your hoops. To undo it, we're going to screw the top, and then the 2 pieces should slide apart. Okay, so the one with the screw we're going to set aside for the moment. The single hoop is going to go on the bottom. You're going to place your fabric on top. So this even weave fabric looks like it has little squares in it. So this is really good to practice on. So you can see where your needle and your stitches are going. And this is really good for cross stitch as well. So this fabric is going to go on top of your hoop. And then the outer hoop, you might want to do it almost all the way undone, so it has a good stretch to it. You're going to place this right over everything. And we want it to be nice and tight on there, so our fabric is taut when we are stitching and it's not going to be loose. Once that is on, you're going to screw the top back together. And now we are set to learn our stitches. Okay, so our first step here is threading our needle. So a lot of the time, it's very, very tricky to get thread through that tiny little eye of the needle there. So you get a needle threader in your kit. So to use this, you're actually going to thread this little wire through the needle first. There, so that's in, okay? I'm gonna leave that right there. So with our floss, so I like to use little sections. So you do not need a whole bunch all at once. The longer it is, the more chance it's going to tangle and knot. So I just like to use a little section at a time, and I can add more as I go. Okay, so I have my needle and I have my threader. I'm going to put my embroidery floss through the nice big open piece of wire, just like that. And then now you pull that all the way through and it threads the needle for you. All right, so I have my even weave fabric ready, my hoop ready, my needle is ready to go. So the first stitch I'm going to teach you is called a running stitch. So this is very easy. It's the simplest of all of the stitches. And it's nice on this fabric because you can see where your needle needs to come up through the top and down through the bottom. So I start with my needle and my thread, and I'm going to come up from the bottom through one of the holes. And what I like to do is I actually leave a tail on the back. If you prefer to knot it, you're welcome to, but once you get going, it's not going to come undone. It's actually going to stay just like that. So I like to leave a tail and just hold it. Okay, so once I'm up through the top, I'm going to go down through the next stitch, or through the next hole. Okay, so you come up and then you go down. All right, you got a little sort of a dash. So you're going to skip a little space. You're going to come up the next hole in the row. And then you're going to go down the next one. So all this is going up and down from hole to hole. Up and down. And it's going to make a little dash line like you're driving on the highway where you get to pass those big trucks. So this is a running stitch. So when you're done and you're ready to finish this off, So flip your hoop over, and all I like to do is I like to slip a few little stitches, kind of heading back the opposite direction through the thread that's already there. And then I'll just take my scissors, leave a little bit of a tail, and trim. Okay, the next stitch we're going to learn is a back stitch. So it's very, very similar to our running stitch, except rather than having dashes, it makes a very solid line. So we're going to start the exact same way. So we're going to come up from the bottom through one of our holes. Again, I like to leave a little tail, and I just hold it. Okay, we're going to go down the next one, up the next one. So it starts almost identical to the running stitch. So far it's the same. So rather than going forward this way, we're actually going to loop back the other way. So into this stitch that I've already created, I'm going to put my needle down where the thread already is. And I'm going backwards now. Okay, so it becomes a solid line. Now, when I come up, I'm going to come up the next available hole, all the way up, and I'm going to go back into where my thread is. So this is a back stitch because you're heading backwards to where you already were. Up again, and back down. So this creates a solid line. So we have our running stitch and our back stitch, so a dash line and a solid line. The next one we're gonna make, it might be my favorite stitch. So this is the chain stitch. So this one actually looks like a braid. I really like the shape of it, and it's fun to do. It's definitely not as easy as this, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, so we're gonna start the same way. We're going to come up from the bottom through one of our holes. Okay, and again, pull, leave a tail, hold it. Okay, so I'm gonna make this one, rather than every little hole, I'm gonna do every second hole, just so you can see the shape of it, okay? So I'm up here, I'm gonna go down the next hole, right beside it, just because all I want is just a very, very small little line, so I can slide my needle underneath that afterwards, and you'll understand in a second. So I'm gonna go down. So right now I just have a little dash. That's all I wanna start with. So now I'm going to go up 2 away, just so you can see the shape. Okay, so now I'm 2 holes away. I'm coming up. Okay, now I actually place my needle flat against the fabric, and I'm going to go under that stitch that I made. I'm gonna go underneath to the other side. Okay, and I'm going to go back down the hole that I came out of, back down to where I started. And when you keep doing this, it turns into a braid. So now I've done the first stitch. I'm gonna go 2 away. Oh. I'm going to go under this chain. So I'm gonna go flat and under that stitch, and through, and down where I came out of. And you can kind of start to see it's looking like a braid. They're loops. It's like a chain, right? Like a chain link. So that's the name of this one, is the chain. Again, so up, 2 away, pull up, lay flat, and go underneath that stitch, back down where I came out of. So when you look at it, you can see that it's bigger, it's thicker, and it has a really nice loop, loop, loop look to it. It definitely looks like a braid. It reminds me of a crochet chain. So if you crochet, that's sort of the look of it as well. Our next stitch is called a blanket stitch. So this would be something if you did a border or even somewhere on the inside of your embroidery, depending on what you're making. It's a fun stitch, so it's similar to the chain where you have to actually loop under a previous stitch. I'm going to go every second hole again, just so you can see the shape of it much easier. So start the same way, up from the bottom. Again, leave a little tail, hold it down. So I'm working in groups of 2. So I'm actually going to go, instead of to this hole here, I'm gonna go over to this one. So think of like just great big boxes, but I'm gonna do a double box. Okay, so I'm gonna go diagonally down to this one here. So 2 holes diagonal. So I have like it's gonna look like I'm starting a cross stitch. So now if you think of that as a little 2x2 box, I'm gonna go to that top right corner and come up. Now I'm going to go underneath that stitch, similar to the chain that we did prior. I'm gonna go underneath and I'm going to pull it straight. So it's gonna make a little top and side of the box. Okay, so from this point, I'm gonna go again diagonally. So I'm going to go down 2 in a diagonal. I'm going to come up to the top right of that 2x2 box. I'm going to come under that diagonal stitch and pull it up straight. So you're going to end up having a straight line with little straight marks coming down, almost like little teeth. Okay, so 2x2 box, bottom right corner, top right corner, under your stitch, pull it up nice and straight. And you're going to continue in that manner all the way across. Awesome, you guys are doing great so far. So just a reminder, so this is our running stitch, back stitch, chain stitch, and blanket stitch. So the next one I'm going to teach you is a cross stitch. So this one's very easy. It's basically just making X's all the way across. But there is a trick if you're doing multiple in a row. I will show you that trick. So we're going to start out the same way as our blanket stitch. We're going to go up, and again, I'm going to do the 2x2 square just so it's easier. So up on the left top corner, down on the bottom right. So let's go up here. And again, leave a tail. So I'm going to go diagonal to the bottom. So 2x2 box again. Like that. So basically all you want to do is make X's all the way across. But the easiest way to do this is to go one direction this way and then the opposite direction back. So you cover it all at once rather than doing a single X, a single X, a single X. So now I'm just going to continue making those diagonals all the way across. So just like this, you want to have a row of diagonals going the same direction. Okay, so I have my row of diagonals going the same direction this way. Now I'm going to do the same thing on top of them, going the opposite way, so it creates X's the entire way along. So just like where I would be starting my next diagonal, I'm going to top right corner, but instead of going this direction, I'm going to go back this way and start making X's. So back into the same hole that I was in prior. And just like that. So you're going to end up using all the same holes where you have already stitched your first diagonals. Okay, so I finished my cross stitch here. And what's nice about going in one direction and then back the other way, it's faster and it gives them a uniform look rather than trying to do one X at each time. You might end up with a different direction going on top rather than the one previous, but this one makes sure that it does uniform stitches all the way across. You guys are doing great. We are on to our last stitch already. So this was our running stitch, our back stitch, chain stitch, blanket stitch, cross stitch, and now I'm going to teach you a French knot. So this is where they look like little polka dots. These are really cute accents. When you're doing your embroidery, you can use them as maybe little flowers or little snowflakes if you're doing something for Christmas. Okay, so for this one, you're going to start the same way, come up from the bottom, leave a tail, hold it nice and tight. Okay, so for this part, you're actually going to need both hands. Okay, you're going to hold your needle, and with your thread that's closest to your fabric, you're going to take it and wrap it around your needle. Let's start with 2 times. So depending on how many times you wrap, it determines the size of your French knot. So we're gonna start with 2. So 1, 2, and you want this to be nice and tight. Okay, now you're going to put your needle, I'm gonna turn so I can get in here, not all the way to the next hole and not back down the same hole. I'm gonna leave a little bit of space and I'm actually gonna go in between the holes into where the fabric is. I'm gonna go down and pull. So when this happens, you're gonna leave a little polka dot, just like that, okay? Now you can move on to the next one. Leave a few spaces in between. So come up again, nice and tight. Okay, hold this thread closest to the fabric. You're gonna wrap 1, 2, 3. Let's go down in between the holes and pull nice and tight. And then there's your little polka dot. So keep practicing. This one is a little bit tricky to get. Sometimes when you're doing it, it unravels on itself and you pull the thread right through. So this one is going to need a little bit more practice, but they are absolutely adorable once you get them. So up from the bottom, using the thread closest to the fabric, hold your needle, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna hold that and place that into the fabric right beside. Okay, I'm going right beside it and then pulling through. And you have a little polka dot. So there are all the stitches that I'm going to teach you. Have fun with it, practice it. Once you get really good at it, it's really relaxing and a lot of fun to see what you come up with. Once you're comfortable with this, I'm going to show you how to create your own design on your piece of cotton fabric. Okay, so you are ready to create your own design on your cotton fabric. So I made an ornament for the Christmas tree. It's super cute and a little bit creepy, but it's pretty funny. So I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks how to create your own, but again, you can create whatever you choose. So the first thing that I did was I printed off from the computer what I want transferred onto my fabric, so I have a template. with my fabric, I'm going to place it on top. And with a nice sharp pencil, I'm just going to trace what I see straight through there. If you hold this up to a window or a light source from the back, it's going to be so much easier when you're doing that. Okay, so I've transferred my letters onto my fabric. You can see them. What's nice is you can erase it. So this isn't permanent at all. So I like using pencil, so just so I have kind of a guide to where I need to be. Ideally, your fabric would be ironed beforehand as well. So if you have a few minutes, give that a quick iron. Okay, so again, to assemble your hoop, you're going to put the single circle down first. You're going to center your project on that hoop and the outer ring on top, making sure that it is nice and tight. And a key when you're doing this as well is as you're tightening it, make sure that you're actually pulling the fabric so all the way around so it is nice and tight and it's not going to slip while it's in there. All right, now you're ready to use all of those stitches on there that you just learned. So another tip or trick is with your embroidery floss, if there is a section that you want something to be very, very tiny and detailed, your floss is actually made up of 6 different pieces. So you can actually pull it apart. So if you just want a very, very detailed, fine section, you can pull your thread apart into smaller pieces and just use a portion of it. Just like that, and just use a couple of threads rather than the whole thing. When I was making this is a full section of embroidery floss. This was only 2 or 3 pieces. So this is much thinner than the C's or the sleeping. And remember also when you're using opposite colors or contrasting colors, it's going to pop really, really well as well. So think of your color combinations when you're making it as well. Thank you so much for following along. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all of the things. And when you're done your project, we would absolutely love to see what you came up with. So please tag us at Pinovate on Instagram. Thanks so much for following along. Bye.